Thank you very much. Further debate? The member for Nepean Carleton.
Thank you very much, Speaker. It is my pleasure and an honour to rise in the 41st Parliament and take my seat once again as the member for Nepean Carleton. It's also a personal thrill to be able to speak to the speech from the throne, and I'd be remiss not only to congratulate Premier Wynne as our new Premier and elected Premier and first female elected Premier, but also to say thank you to our Lieutenant Governor, David Sionley, who deliberated on his last throne speech. So to him, I say thanks on behalf of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus. I'm not going to mince words. It was a humbling election for myself and my colleagues, but I'm reminded each and every day I assume my seat in this House how fortunate I am to carry with me the voices of over 130,000 Nepean Carleton residents here in this Legislative Assembly. So to them I want to say thank you, and I want to confirm to them that I'll continue the work of their best interests in this mandate as I have carried on in the previous three. Speaker, my riding is one I'm proud of, and I know all 107 members are very proud of their riding. Mine happens to be a very unique one. It's a microcosm, I believe, of the growing and changing Ontario that the Ontario PC Party in this legislature must seek to represent. Whether it's urban Ottawa transit managing explosive suburban growth in Riverside South, Findlay Creek and Barrhaven, or protecting our rural Ontario way of life in North Gore and Manotick, in Osgood and Greeley, I've learned that Nepean Carleton's residents are diverse, but they are strong. The people I represent come from all over the world. Others, like me, came from different parts of Canada, and some have lived for generations on the family farm. What unites the people of Nepean Carleton, however, is not just their geographic location within the city of Ottawa. I believe it is what their expectations are of government. Expectations, I suspect, that are shared by all Ontarians. They pay their taxes, but they expect health care services for their families and schools to be built for their neighbourhoods. They expect us to keep up with roads and bridges and transit. They expect safe streets. And, Speaker, they expect clean air and clean water. They also expect their government to live within its means and protect their hard-earned tax dollars that they send to Toronto, and protect it wisely. The Liberal government on this last score has failed my constituents. Liberals have been engaged in billion-dollar scandals. They're allowing our deficit to increase. They are continuing to spend without a plan, and that puts our very core and valued public services at risk. It also makes Ontarians question whether they're getting value for the tax dollars they send to Queen's Park. On that front, it's going to be up to the Ontario Progressive Conservative Caucus to hold this Liberal government accountable for all Ontarians. Good government comes from strong opposition. And if there's one thing that this Progressive Conservative Party has been good at over the past decade, it's been in opposition. So I assure the people at home, Progressive Conservatives and otherwise, that we are going to continue to do the job we have been assigned, and that is to hold this Liberal government accountable. But in seriousness, and I think as some of my colleagues have demonstrated, where we can work with the other parties and where we can make progress by working with others, we will do that. We have seen it before. My colleague from Whitby, Oshawa, has done an amazing amount of work on a select committee. We have seen it before with my colleagues, Steve Clark and Bob Bailey, who have championed private members' business with other members of this Assembly. Where it will work and where it's in the best interest of Ontarians, the Progressive Conservative Party of Ontario will continue to work with the other side. I'm proud to have stood with my colleague from Ottawa Centre, now the Government House Leader, to work on a suicide prevention plan for our city. So where it works, we are going to do it. But I assure folks that where the government fails, where they do not advance the interests of the population, we are going to make sure in the Ontario PC Party that we point out that there is a better way. That is our job, and we take it seriously. We need a government with policies that do good, not just sound good. And it will be the place of the Ontario PC Party to provide that opposition, Speaker. Now that brings to mind 3 specific areas where I will like to point out to the government where they can do better and where we believe in the Ontario PC Party that there is a role for us to play, a meaningful role that will make Ontario a better place. First, my colleagues, both our interim leader and, of course, my colleague from Whitby, Oshawa, talked about needing to live within our means and balancing our budget. When Moody's and Standard & Poor's lower our credit rating as expected, that will have an immediate and negative impact on our schools and on our hospitals. It's been pointed out that servicing the debt and the deficit in Ontario is right now our 3rd largest spending priority. Every single dollar spent on servicing our debt and deficit is a dollar less for a patient in a hospital and a dollar less for a child in a classroom in this province. It is the 3rd largest spending priority, only behind education and health care. So it will be up to a strong Ontario Progressive Conservative Party to hold this government to account on its ability to pay, its contract negotiations, and its use of government assets. I'm grateful to Interim PC Leader Jim Wilson for appointing me as critic of the Treasury Board, whose role it will be to rein in government spending and tackle the debt and the deficit. It is a key role, no doubt, in the government, and I am committed as the Progressive Conservative opposition critic to ensuring that this government does get it right, not only for my daughter's generation, but for my daughter's daughter's generation. The next few years will show whether or not this Liberal government can break their debt dependence. If they cannot, Ontarians will look for a party that they can trust to deliver the services that we all need and do it within a sustainable budget supported by an expanded economy. And I believe that the Ontario PC Party can do that. And I believe in our future, and I believe that we will rebuild again. The Liberal record, however, on the economy has not been strong. Our interim leader has laid out the many reasons why we have had a lackluster performance in the economy. We have lost in this province hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs. We have the highest industrial hydro rates in North America. Our debt is higher than all of the other provinces combined, Speaker. Our government needs to do better. And if they cannot, I'm confident that the Ontario PC Party in 4 years will be able to rise to that challenge. The best way to protect our core and valued public services is not by digging a deeper hole into debt and deficit and raising people's taxes. It's by getting your spending under control with a stronger private sector economy and a balanced provincial budget. It is that simple. It will require hard work and tough choices, but we know the road ahead, Speaker. A second area where the Ontario PC Party can help Ontarians is by keeping a watchful eye on the Liberals' implementation of a new private sector pension. This plan creates the illusion that future benefits can be achieved without current costs. The Liberal plan will give some people benefits decades from now, but it doesn't address the real issues of today. The new payroll tax will pay for the plan will cost some people their jobs. We will lose more jobs as a result of the implementation of this plan. And with the forced contributions, it will take money from people's pocket who are right now struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling with high hydro bills. I'm a soccer mom. The other parents I know are struggling to balance their own budget. They're seeing their mortgages increase, higher electricity costs, higher gas prices. The cost of groceries is going up, Speaker. It's becoming not only more difficult for them to put their kids through soccer and hockey, it's getting more difficult for them to think about saving for their children's education down the road. It will be the responsibility of the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party to criticize these policies. But we have to do it with logical and hard facts. And we have to do it for the best interests of all Ontarians. People need to know why it's a bad plan, and what we would do to ensure it's better. So I'm again confident that we in the Ontario Progressive Conservative Party will provide that alternative for all Ontarians and in this House. This brings me to the third area that needs to be addressed, and it's something that I find to be quite personal, and I think it's something we have to have an honest, thoughtful conversation about in this Legislative Assembly. As one of the few MPPs who represents an urban riding with a large rural community, I've experienced working on urban issues, managing explosive suburban growth, and standing up for the uniqueness and the wholesomeness of rural Ontario. For the Liberals, indeed all of us, we, as an Assembly, need to address the urban-rural divide in Ontario. It's something I've worked hard on in the past 8 years, and I think it's something that we have to honestly address in this Assembly. On election night, the lines were pretty clearly drawn. While much is made that the Ontario PCs draw up mostly from rural Ontario, the reverse is true for the government. They've almost been shut out of rural Ontario. Ontario PCs can play an important role in this dialogue, and the government must also be part of that conversation. For those living in rural Ontario, they have felt ignored and abandoned at Queen's Park. In my humble estimation, Speaker, that has to change. Whether the cancellation of the Slots at Racetrack program or the negative impacts on wind turbines that are splitting communities and costing the provincial treasury, it will be up to the government to bridge those divides and ease those concerns. Where rural schools are concerned, it means the government must consider the benefits of keeping a rural school open. Sometimes that school is the lifeblood of the community, and that has to be a major consideration. As Ontario PCs, we must continue to defend the little guy and bring their voices to Queen's Park, but we also have a challenge. We have to learn to speak to people in urban Ottawa, in Toronto, in Kitchener, and in London. I'm confident we can do that. I'm confident we can help forge a better understanding. We can urge a common ground. But in this area, I firmly believe the government needs the opposition as much as the opposition needs the government, because if we are truly to speak for one Ontario, we have to begin to understand one another. If they have the foresight and they are prepared to admit mistakes have been made, the government will work with us to right the wrongs felt in rural Ontario, starting with changes to the Green Energy Act and fixes to the horse racing industry. To achieve these results in these areas, it means we must be an opposition that engages all Ontarians, not just one that speaks to itself. But that said, it must be true as well for the government to speak and engage with all Ontarians and not just the ones whom they are most comfortable with. That is the provincial government's core job. It is their core responsibility, and we, as Progressive Conservatives, we will be here to remind them of that. Thank you very much, Speaker.